I walked across the stage, lights blinding my eyes, a $50,000 scholarship certificate in my hands. Applause thundered around me, yet the front row, the one reserved for family, was empty. My parents were thousands of miles away, posting smiling photos from Paris with my sister. They hadn't even called. For years I'd been the quiet one, the afterthought, the background to my sister's spotlight. But today was different. Today the world was watching me, and they had no idea how much I'd fought to get here, or the truth that was about to shatter their perfect family picture. I was 9 when I realized being the good one meant you got less. My sister Samantha, 2 years older, could crash a car and be gifted a newer model within months. I got a hand-me-down backpack for my birthday. "You don't need much, Emily," my mother would say with a smile that was meant to be kind but landed like a door shutting in my face. I told myself it was fine. I was self-sufficient. I could tie my own shoes, make my own lunches, get myself to school. Independence became my armor. By the time I was 19, a freshman at a prestigious university, the pattern was carved into my bones. Samantha's life was a highlight reel. New cars, designer bags, trips abroad, funded by the same parents who told me, "College is expensive. Maybe you should think about commuting instead of living on campus." I didn't argue. I'd learned that speaking up only made them defensive, or worse, dismissive. One chilly February morning, an email pinged into my inbox. An invitation to represent my university in a statewide science competition. My project on microbial fuel cells had taken months of work, late nights in the lab, and 3 rejected drafts. I opened the email at the kitchen table while Mom was packing Samantha's suitcase for yet another much-needed getaway. "Mom," I said, unable to keep the excitement out of my voice. "I got invited to the State Science Expo. It's next month in Albany. They cover travel and—" "That's great, honey," she cut in, sliding another silk blouse into Samantha's luggage. "But next month, we're going to be in Miami for your sister's spring break. You know how hard she's been working. Maybe you can go next year." I stared at her. "There's no next year. This is my last chance before I graduate." She sighed, not looking up. "Emily, we can't be everywhere. Samantha needs us right now." I nodded, though my throat felt tight. My hand stayed on the laptop, fingers frozen. Next year, next time. Those words had been the soundtrack of my life. That night I sat in my dorm's tiny kitchenette, chewing a stale sandwich, scrolling through old family photos on my phone. There I was, always at the edge of the frame, half my face cut off, while Samantha beamed in the center. It was a strange comfort, the proof that my memories weren't exaggerations. The favoritism wasn't in my head. It was right there, pixelated and preserved. The first real fracture came 2 weeks later. I'd gone to visit my grandmother on a Sunday afternoon, partly because I missed her, partly because I needed to be in a house where I wasn't invisible. We were having tea when she sighed and said, "Your mother's always been like this, you know. She did it to me too." I blinked. "To you?" She gave a wry smile. "Oh, yes. When I remarried after your grandfather passed, she thought I'd embarrassed the family. Since then, I've been, let's say, less central to her picture-perfect life." It was unsettling hearing my grandmother describe the same chilly distance I'd felt my whole life. She stirred her tea, then added, "Your sister's trouble last year didn't help. That business with the dean? They're trying to paper over it, make her look flawless again." I leaned forward. "Trouble?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Samantha nearly got expelled. Cheating, plagiarism, messy stuff. Your parents pulled strings, spent a lot of money. Now they're overcompensating. Trips, gifts. It's all part of the cover-up. A strange mixture of shock and vindication swelled in my chest. So it wasn't just that Samantha was naturally more lovable or more talented. It was strategy, image management. I wasn't just overlooked, I was deliberately sidelined. Driving back to campus that night, I kept replaying her words. It explained so much. It also made something in me harden. I had spent years waiting for recognition, for my turn in the spotlight, and it had never come. Maybe it never would, unless I took it. In my dorm room, I opened my laptop and typed "full ride scholarships" into the search bar. Pages of results filled the screen, programs I'd never heard of, competitions I'd never been told about. I started bookmarking them, one after another, my heart pounding like I was doing something illicit. Maybe I was. In my family, ambition was supposed to be Samantha's thing. The last link I saved was for a $50,000 merit-based award that required months of preparation. The deadline was far away, but I bookmarked it anyway. A small red flag in my browser bar that felt like a promise. I didn't know yet how I'd win it. I only knew I would. I sat back, the glow of the screen lighting my face in the dark room. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar humming beneath my skin. Not hope exactly, but resolve. And I wondered as the campus lights flickered outside my window if my parents would even notice the day I stopped asking for their approval. The spring semester rolled in with a sharp wind and an even sharper determination on my part. I joined the university's Environmental Science Club, signed up for a research assistant position, and spent most nights in the lab instead of the dorm lounge. My GPA hovered just shy of perfect. When the results for the State Science Expo came out, I was ranked 5th in the entire state. I called home to share the news. My father answered, his voice distracted. "That's good, Em," he said after a pause. "Does it come with prize money?" "No, it's just recognition." "Well, still good for your resume, I guess. Your mom's busy helping Samantha pack for her internship in LA. She'll call you later." She didn't. Something inside me clicked. I'd been chasing their approval like a dog chasing a car, running full speed toward something that would never stop for me. From now on, I decided they wouldn't get to see the best parts of me. I'd keep my victories to myself, store them away like precious coins in a secret vault. That night, I lay on my bed with my headphones in, the soft hum of a study motivation playlist wrapping around me. The room was dark except for the blinking router light. Between tracks, my own sigh slipped out, sharp in my ears. It startled me. How tired I sounded. How old. Days blurred into weeks. I picked up a part-time job at a late-night cafe to cover research expenses the university didn't fund. It meant getting home at 2 a.m., then waking up at 6 for morning labs. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My hands shook sometimes when I carried trays, but I told myself it was worth it. One rainy Thursday, as I was shoving a protein bar into my bag, my biology professor, Dr. Harris, stopped me outside the lecture hall. "Emily, you have a minute?" I nodded, surprised. Dr. Harris was brilliant but intimidating, her feedback famously blunt. She led me to her office, where the walls were lined with awards and framed research papers. "I've been watching your work," she began. "You remind me of, well, me at your age." I almost laughed. "You were pulling espresso shots at 2 in the morning, too." Her mouth curved into a smile. "Not exactly, but I know what it's like to be overlooked in your own family." "Middle child?" "Yeah." The word came out quieter than I meant. So was I. I learned to fight for opportunities quietly, strategically. That's how I won the Glenworth Scholarship back in '98. I frowned. What's that? It's one of the most competitive undergraduate awards in the country. $50,000, mentorship, travel stipends, life-changing stuff. And I just got the notice for this year's cycle. She handed me a printout. Deadline's in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. My pulse spiked. That's not much time. No, it's not. But I think you have a real shot. You've got the grades, the projects, the story. The rest is packaging it right. The idea of having something so big, so transformational, and keeping it entirely mine lit a spark deep in my chest. No phone calls to ruin the moment. No polite claps from people checking their watches. Just me, claiming it. When I got back to my dorm, I printed the application packet. 16 pages of requirements, essays, and recommendations. I took a strip of bright red duct tape from my desk drawer, tore off a piece with my teeth, and pressed the packet to my wall. It hung there like a battle flag. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at it, feeling the bass from my playlist pulse through the mattress. 3 weeks wasn't a lot of time. But 3 weeks was enough to rewrite the story my family thought they knew about me. And this time, they wouldn't see it coming. The scholarship application consumed every waking hour. I split my time between research summaries, recommendation requests, and endless drafts of personal essays. But Dr. Harris insisted I needed more than just achievements on paper. I had to learn how to tell my story out loud. She started giving me short speaking exercises after class. At first, my voice shook, my hands clutched the edges of the podium, but I pushed through. People remember how you make them feel, she reminded me. Your facts matter, but your truth matters more. It was during one of those practice sessions that the idea for the vlog came. Late one night, I propped my phone against a stack of textbooks and recorded a 3-minute video. No face, just my voice, over still images. Family pictures where I was half out of frame, report cards tucked in drawers, my sister's smiling face plastered on the fridge. I called the account The Invisible Middle and posted the clip on TikTok. I didn't expect anyone to watch, but by morning it had thousands of views. Comments piling up from strangers. This is my life too. I feel you, sis. My parents never came to my games either. By the end of the week, the video had gone viral in the middle child community. People stitched it, shared their own stories, and sent me DMs full of gratitude and grief. One night, curled up in bed with my laptop, I scrolled through the comments and paused on one from a girl in Texas. I feel you, sis. Something about the simplicity of it made me smile. Not the polite smile I wore at family dinners, but something genuine, unguarded. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Then the email came. Subject line, "Congratulations, final interview invitation." I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The Glenworth committee wanted to interview me next week. My chest tightened. This was it, the final gate before the award. I threw myself into preparation, rehearsing answers with Dr. Harris, recording myself on my phone to critique my tone and pacing. But late at night, I started thinking beyond the interview. What would I say if I actually won? The words came slowly at first, then faster. A speech that wasn't about grades or awards, but about the truth I'd been too scared to say aloud. That family wasn't just about blood or last names. That sometimes the people who should have been your biggest supporters weren't there. But others stepped up instead. I kept the draft in a folder named Project X, tucked away where no one could accidentally stumble across it. A few days before the interview, my friend Lena stopped by my dorm. She'd been one of the few people who knew about the Glenworth application from the start. Big day coming up," she said, handing me a coffee. "Yeah, just trying not to overthink it." She smiled in that mischievous way that made me nervous. "Don't kill me, but I might have sent the event schedule to someone at the Gazette." I froze. "You what?" "They love local success stories. Trust me, it's good press. Your parents might even see it." I wasn't sure if I wanted that. The thought of them showing up out of guilt or to save face made my stomach knot. Still, the idea of the whole town watching. That was something. 2 nights later, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Emily. I'm covering the Glenworth ceremony for the Gazette. We'll be live streaming. Would love to get a quote from you beforehand." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Live streaming meant anyone could watch. My parents, Samantha, the strangers who'd found me through my vlog, the people who'd told me I mattered. The speech in my Project X folder suddenly felt less like a secret and more like a loaded weapon. The morning of the Glenworth ceremony felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. My hands were steady as I zipped up my dress, but my pulse thudded in my ears. The venue's auditorium was buzzing when I arrived. Students in gowns, faculty in crisp suits, camera crews adjusting their lights. I took my seat near the stage, scanning the front row out of habit. 4 seats bore small cards with my name and family printed in bold letters. All 4 were empty. I didn't expect them to be filled, but the sight still caught somewhere in my chest. When my name was announced, applause rolled over me like a wave. I climbed the steps, the stage lights flaring so bright I had to squint. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the camera crew pivot, the live stream feed broadcasting every step I took. Somewhere, maybe thousands of somewheres, people were watching. I reached the podium, fingers brushing the edges of the speech I'd written and rewritten a dozen times. Then I let the first line fall away. I looked toward the empty seats in the front row, the place where my parents should have been, and let the pause stretch. The audience shifted, a murmur rippling through them. "Some seats stay empty," I said finally, my voice clear and steady. "But my heart is full." For a moment there was silence, then applause, slow at first, then swelling until it filled the hall. I finished the speech as I'd planned, talking about the mentors, friends, and strangers who had believed in me, the family I had found beyond blood. By the time I stepped off the stage, my phone was vibrating non-stop. Lena was the first to reach me, her eyes wide. "Emily, you're trending." The live stream clip of me looking at the empty seats and delivering that single line had already been clipped, subtitled, and shared across platforms. By the time the ceremony ended, it was climbing into the top 10 trending videos nationwide. Half a world away, in Paris, my parents and Samantha saw it too. I didn't have to imagine their reactions. I knew the looks. My mother's tight-lipped disapproval, my father's awkward cough, Samantha's smirk. I didn't check my messages until late that night, and by then the story had spun beyond me. The Gazette ran a headline, "Local Student Wins $50K Scholarship, Family Absent at Ceremony." Larger outlets picked it up, quoting my speech and embedding the clip. Comments flooded in from strangers outraged on my behalf. It didn't take long for Samantha to fire back. On her Instagram story, over a photo of a Paris cafe table, she wrote, "Drama queen much?" It was a mistake. Within hours, screenshots of her post were circulating online, and the tide turned against her. "Maybe she should try supporting her sister for once," read one reply that had thousands of likes. I sat on my bed, laptop open, watching it all unfold. It should have felt triumphant, but instead I felt heavy, Not because they didn't deserve the criticism, but because the story was now so much bigger than me. I closed my laptop and opened my email instead. Dozens of new messages waited, many from complete strangers. One was from a woman in Chicago who wrote, "I missed my daughter's recital once, and she never let me forget it. Your speech made me call her tonight, just to say I'm proud." Another from a man in Oregon. "My dad was never there for me. You made me feel less alone." Somewhere between the fourth and fifth email, my vision blurred. I pressed the heel of my hand to my eyes, but the tears kept coming, hot, unsteady, the kind that left your breath uneven. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd cried like that. Years, maybe. I let the moment stretch, the quiet hum of my dorm room wrapping around me like a blanket. No stage lights, no applause, just me and the screen glowing in the dark. Then my inbox pinged again. New message. From Mom. Subject: "Let's talk when we get back." I stared at it for a long time. There were no apologies in those 4 words, no acknowledgement of what had happened. But it was something. A door cracked open, even if only a sliver. In the weeks after the Glenworth ceremony, the noise around me didn't stop, but I learned to tune it differently. Instead of reading every heated comment about my family, I started listening to the messages that mattered, the ones from people who saw themselves in my story. Still, the storm had left me drained. Dr. Harris was the one who suggested therapy. "It's not about fixing you," she said over coffee. "It's about giving you tools to carry what you've been carrying." I found a counselor who specialized in family dynamics. Sitting on her couch during our first session, I wasn't sure where to start. But eventually the words spilled out. The empty seats, the quiet dismissals, the way I'd been taught to expect less. She listened. No judgment, no interruption. Then said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean erasure. You can remember everything and still choose peace." I held on to that sentence. Week by week, I started releasing the need for my parents to rewrite the past. I could keep the truth and still move forward. When an email came inviting me to a conference on family equity at a nearby university, I said yes. I attended as an anonymous participant, sitting in the back, taking notes. But during a breakout session, the facilitator asked for volunteers to share personal stories. My hand went up before I could think. I told them about the photo albums where I was half cropped out, the competitions they'd never attended, the $50,000 moment they'd missed. I kept my name out of it, but I saw heads nodding around the room, eyes glistening in quiet recognition. Later, over lunch, Dr. Harris found me. She'd been on a panel that morning. "I didn't know you were here," she said, trying to keep a low profile. Her smile was wistful. "You know, I didn't speak to my parents for 2 years after I graduated. They didn't start respecting me until I made it clear I could walk away. Sometimes distance isn't cruel. It's the only way to reset the terms." Her words lingered long after the conference ended. 2 weeks later, the Glenworth Foundation emailed me. "We'd be honored if you would deliver the keynote address at next year's freshman convocation." I read the line 3 times, feeling a familiar thrum in my chest. This wasn't just another speech. It was a chance to define myself for a new audience, before the world, and maybe before the people who had underestimated me all my life. From that point on, I stopped hiding. I posted my face on the Invisible Middle TikTok for the first time, introducing myself as Emily Carter, Glenworth Scholar. The following exploded overnight. Suddenly I was doing interviews, writing guest articles, and speaking on panels about sibling favoritism and resilience. Someone called it the middle child movement, and the name stuck. The best part wasn't the attention. It was the DMs from students who sent me screenshots of scholarship offers saying, "You made me believe I could try." I started running free workshops on weekends, helping high schoolers polish their applications. Every time I saw their relief at being taken seriously, it felt like I was rewriting a tiny part of my own story. By late summer, the convocation was drawing near. I stood on the empty stage one afternoon, rehearsing while the AV crew tested microphones. The hall smelled faintly of fresh paint. I glanced out at the rows of seats, picturing them filled with new students and their families. When the day came, the room was packed. My speech flowed, part rallying cry, part love letter to anyone who had ever been made to feel invisible. Family is not defined by who shares your DNA, I told them. It's defined by who shows up for you, again and again. Then, as the applause swelled, my gaze drifted toward the back. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd imagined it. But no, 2 familiar silhouettes stood there, half in shadow. My father, with his hands clasped in front of him, and my mother, still and unreadable. My breath caught, but I didn't let my voice falter. Whatever happened next, I knew I was standing on this stage because of me. And for the first time, I was okay with that. The moment the ceremony ended, I stepped down from the stage and felt the crowd closing in, students wanting photos, faculty offering congratulations, a blur of handshakes and voices. Through it all, I kept catching glimpses of the 2 figures standing at the back. They didn't push forward, didn't wave or call my name. When the last group dispersed, I made my way toward the wings, intending to collect my things and slip out the side door. That's when they appeared. My parents, framed by the dim light of the hallway. My father's hair looked grayer than I remembered. My mother's eyes, usually sharp, seemed uncertain. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then my father said quietly, "We were wrong." The words hung in the air like a fragile bridge between us. No rushed apologies, no dramatic embraces. Just the truth, stripped of everything else. My mother reached out, and instead of pulling me into a hug, she simply took my hand. Her grip was warm, tentative. I looked down at our joined hands, the skin familiar, yet foreign, and gave a small nod. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was an acknowledgement that we could stand in the same space without the old scripts dictating every line. We walked together out of the hall, not speaking much. Outside, the evening light painted the campus gold, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was hurrying away from them. The months that followed passed in a rhythm of steady progress. I finished my undergraduate degree with honors, defended my thesis on sustainable microbial energy, and submitted applications for graduate programs. The Glenworth name carried weight, but it was my portfolio, the research, the speeches, the advocacy, that opened doors. When I received the news that I'd been awarded a full scholarship for my master's in environmental policy, I celebrated with the people who had been my constants. Lena, Dr. Harris, and a handful of friends who had cheered me on from the beginning. My parents sent flowers. It was a small gesture, but I kept them on my desk until the petals fell. In the years that followed, my speaking engagements expanded beyond the middle child narrative. I talked about equity in education, about dismantling systemic favoritism in schools and workplaces. Yet every time I stood on stage, I wove in pieces of my own story, because I knew there was always someone in the audience who needed to hear it. Somewhere along the way, I stopped checking whether my parents were watching. Sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. The point was, I was no longer performing for them. I was speaking to the ones who'd been where I'd been, waiting for someone to notice their worth. The twist came on an early spring evening at an awards banquet hosted by the Glenworth Foundation. I was there to present this year's scholarship. My speech was printed and folded neatly in my pocket, but my mind was elsewhere, reviewing the long list of nominees I'd read over the past month. When I reached the podium and opened the envelope, my breath caught. The name staring back at me belonged to a boy from a small town 2 states away. 3rd of 5 children, first in his family to go to college. His application essay had made me stop and reread it, the way his words tiptoed between pride and longing. I looked up and found him in the crowd. He was sitting alone at a table near the side, his hands gripping the edge of his chair. I could see the hope in his eyes, but also the disbelief, like he'd trained himself not to expect too much. "Ethan Ramirez," I announced, my voice carrying over the room. "Please join me on stage." He walked up slowly, shoulders hunched, as if bracing for someone to tell him there'd been a mistake. I handed him the certificate, and as the applause swelled, I leaned in and said quietly, "Your seat will never be empty." For a second, he just stared at me, and then his eyes shimmered. He nodded, clutching the award like it was the first real proof of something he'd always suspected, that he mattered. The rest of the evening moved in a blur. Photos, handshakes, congratulations. But that moment with Ethan stayed with me, a reminder of why I'd chosen this path. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about making sure fewer people had to live it. When I left the banquet, the night air was cool, the streets still damp from an earlier rain. I walked alone toward my hotel, heels clicking on the pavement, and realized I felt light. Not because everything in my life was perfect, but because I'd stopped waiting for someone else to complete the picture. The girl who once sat at the edge of family photos had learned how to stand in the center of her own frame, and the frame was full.